Alright guys, I'm starting a series on object-oriented PHP on WordPress. But before I get started, let me show you something. Alright, so I did an internet search to see what percentage of websites using PHP currently. And this is the result I got. 75% of the websites, of all websites using PHP, according to Wikipedia. And if you dig deeper, you'll find 78.9, which is almost 80%, according to W3 Techs. So that's a huge percentage, almost 80%, right? Now let's look at how's WordPress doing. All right, look at that. 40% of all websites using WordPress. Now let's check out how WordPress is doing by CMS percentages. There you go, 62% of all CMS use WordPress. Now, just to give you some context on these percentages, let's find out how many websites there is. There you go, 1.7 billion websites. So that means out of 1.7 billion sites, 62% of all the CMSs and 40% of all websites using WordPress, and out of all those, almost 80% sites using PHP. So anybody telling you that WordPress or PHP is dying is lying to you. What's actually dying is the way we used to write PHP. You know, we didn't have any organization, no pattern, no clear perspective, just as the big boy programming languages do, like C# or Java. So, for that reason, I'm bringing in object-oriented PHP on WordPress to you. So let's get started. Okay, so we are at the WordPress backend, and here I have a very simple template with 3 columns here, where I used Bootstrap to do so. And also we have an empty file here under a underscore classes folder, and this is where we're gonna write our class. And so that this class is connected to that template in our functions file, I've already placed a require statement, and this is what our template looks like. And just so you know, I have a very simple WordPress theme I'm using, absolutely bare bones, so that we are not distracted by anything else but just pure object-oriented PHP code. Now let's start writing our first class. Okay, we're back at the code, and now we have our class file and our template side by side. Before we get started, I'm just gonna say that at this point, we're not going to explain the very basics, like what is object-oriented programming, what is interface, what is object, class, etc. What we're going to do here, we're going to learn by examples, basically learn by doing, right? We're going to start writing. So let's just write our first class here. All right. So this is our first class structure, and at this point you probably see that we are following just the WordPress standard of code writing, class names with uppercase letters and underscores in between, and the file names also follow that. But don't worry too much about this, because very soon, as the series progresses, we're going to bring in namespacing, composer, different PHP code writing standards like PSR2, PSR4, etc. So at this point, we're not trying to make anything very complicated. So let's move on. We're going to add an attribute now, public message, and now we're going to add a constructor. Okay, so that's our constructor, and in this constructor, we are going to set our attribute using this. All right, so basically what's going to happen is once we instantiate this class, we're going to put this attribute through whatever message the user wants to pass through, and once this gets in here, we're going to localize that attribute with this class variable, and then now we're going to write our first method. This we will use to display that message. Public. Okay, so that's our first method, and in here we're going to echo this message. Basically, we're just adding a little bit of HTML and putting this variable through, and whenever we call this method, it will display this message wherever we want. All right, so now our class, constructor, and our first method is ready to go. So this is where we implement it on our template. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in an extra PHP block, and right here I'm going to type in our first object variable. Okay, so right now we have our object variable, and we're using the keyword new to instantiate our class test OOPWP, which is this one, and we're sending the message text all is well in there in its constructor. So this is the message, will come right through here, and then it becomes localized through this constructor, and now we can call this method using this object, but not right here though. What we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and start right here under column 1, and we're going to add in horizontal line just to separate from the title, like that. I'm just bringing in a bootstrap class here so that the horizontal line would have some color, and right here we're going to call in that test object, and we're going to call in that method get message, and we must not forget that this is a PHP code, so we'll go ahead and put in a PHP block, and then we can call this method, make it look a little bit nicer here, save it. Now let's go back to the front end, and we should be keeping our eye right here in the column 1. Let's refresh. Look at that. So we have our message from the front end, and this is the text that was passed to our class via the constructor and then got localized and brought back using a method from our class. With this, we begin our journey towards object-oriented PHP on WordPress. Let's go to the next step. Okay, so we're back at the code, and since we are writing everything on WordPress, so let's get WordPress involved. Let's add another attribute here, post ID. All right, which also means we have to add something here because we need to get it from the user via the constructor. Okay, and let's localize it. Post ID equals post ID. All right, let's save that. And now let's add another method here. Okay, so here we're going to get one single post object. I'm going to call it my post equals, we're going to use a WordPress function get post, and this is where we're going to need a post ID. Here's the localized one coming from the constructor, and the constructor one coming from outside wherever the object was instantiated. This is pretty much constructor's job. Save that. Now methods usually return stuff. I mean of course echo works, but that's not the norm, right? So what we do, we have our method return my post. Now our class is ready with another method, and our constructor is ready to take external post ID. So what we do, we're going to choose column number 2, And since we already have our object, the test obj, which was instantiated right here, so let's bring that in. Actually, I always forget we need a PHP block here, and then we can bring in test object and call the method inside get my post. But in order for this to work, we have to enter that second argument, and this one we're going to get from our WordPress backend. Let's go check that out. Okay, so this is our WordPress admin backend, and this is where all the posts are, and we're going to target this post right here, test post 3, and ID is 38. So let's just pass 38. It's a number, so there shouldn't be a problem. Save that. Now here's our object instantiated, and here we're calling our second method get my post. We've already passed our argument, which is the post ID. And please remember, what it's going to return is an object, so this will not show us anything. To see that object, we're gonna have to put this object inside a print r brackets, and now let's paste that, save it. We have to remember, whenever something is returned, it's not going to be visible unless you put it through echo or print or something like that. And in this case, we're going to need a print r, because regular echo is not going to show us an object or an array. So now our function is ready to display the object. Let's go to the front end. Okay, and our target is column number 2. Let's refresh. Boom, there you go. This is our post object. And yes, look, if you look here, you're gonna see it's mixing up with our column title, etc. But don't worry, we're gonna fix that, and we're gonna fix that in a special way that we can learn from it. But for now, let's focus on column number 3. All right, so we are back at the code, and before we get started with our third column, what we do, let's grab this guy where we instantiated our object, cut it, and bring it down here. Save it. Okay, so that if we keep working on the area around here, we can still see our object being instantiated. All right, that being done, let's go back to our class file, and this time we're going to start another method, and this time we're going to bring in our categories. Basically, this get terms function from WordPress brings us all the categories and puts it into this object. Basically, it returns an object with all the categories, and here I'm putting in category as a taxonomy name. So basically, if we had another different taxonomy or custom taxonomy out there, let's say countries, states, whatever, right? So we would be putting in that taxonomy name here, and this function will return whatever objects available in that category in an array and put it in here. And we will see everything very clearly once we display it on the front end. So now we have our third column function here, get my cats, and we're going to go ahead and implement it here. And this time we're going to start with a PHP block, and here it is. This is our test object, and this is our method get my cats, and right here we know we instantiated our object. And once again, since this function is returning the category objects as an array, we need print r. In this case, echoes or regular print will not work. Now let's go to the front end to check it out. Okay, so let's keep an eye out here, column 3, let's refresh. It gave us our category list, which is coming from this WordPress backend categories. These are the guys, but here's the problem. These are not very readable, and they're messing with our titles and such, right? So in this case, let's write an utility class which will have full of utility methods, and that's what we're going to use to make this look pretty. Okay, we're back at the code, and this time I created another file, utils.php, under our classes folder, and this is what our new class looking like, a simple structure. And in the function file, I just created this require statement which will connect our util class to our template. All right, so let's get started with our utility class. And in this one, we're not going to have any constructor. We're just going to have a few methods in there, but interestingly, the methods are going to be static, just like this, public static function. The beauty of static functions or methods is that this class doesn't need to be instantiated like this with a new keyword, right? We can just call them straight, utility class, colon, and the method name, and it will work for us. So let's see what we can do with it. Here, I'm actually passing an object through. It's just a variable, so that as we know in here, these methods are returning objects or arrays. For that reason, we actually have to use print r to at least make them visible, and then when they do show up, they look pretty ugly, unreadable, right? So that's where this utility class and the static methods come in. They're gonna make them look prettier. So let's get started here. First, I'm gonna go ahead and echo. So this is just an HR or horizontal line, and with a little bootstrap class in it, so that it looks pretty. And the reason for this is, let's go back to the front end. As you can see here, our titles call2, call3 are all mixing up, right? Not like this one here, there's a nice little line dividing them. So this time we're going to send this line from our method. So let's go back, and this is the horizontal line that will take care of it. Now just going to go ahead and bring in a PHP structure where we're going to have print r, but it will be surrounded by pre-tags, so that no matter what object we put it through, it's going to look nice and readable, as we will find out very soon. So here, we're going to go ahead and put in our object, save it. Now our class and static method is ready for use. Now let's come back here, because we have two objects to fix. And at this point, we will no longer need this print r right here, nor here. So what we need is, let's copy that line and erase this. Make sure to get rid of that extra bracket or parentheses. Now we're going to declare another variable, post obj. Only because, since we're going to be putting them through other functions, we don't want to type up the whole big line of object and method, all that. We're just going to get the result from here, and this time we're going to get rid of this line and replace it with this line right here. As you can see, we're just calling the utils class, which is this. And since this is a static method, we just use double colon and show nice, directly calling this method straight from this class without instantiating. And now we're going to go ahead and put our object array, post object, through this and save it. Now let's go see how it looks. Okay, so we are at the front end again, and we have to keep our eye right here. Let's refresh. Boom, there you go. Here's our line that we just put in, and our static method with its pre-tags and print r, making everything looks very, very nice and readable. So now that we can read our object here pretty nicely, right? And we have a static method that will make everything look pretty. So why don't we collect a few things from this object, right? For example, the date, the content, title, and even the published status. Let's go see what we can do. So since this is giving us all our objects, we're going to go ahead and put our new stuff right underneath here. Let's just copy this guy. Let's do it 4 times. Keep the actual one, which is showing our objects separate. And here, since these are all objects, let's get some stuff out of those objects, like post date, next post title, and then post content, and last post status. In case you're wondering where I'm getting these, just to make sure, let's go back, and this is where I'm getting them from. Post title, post status, post content, and post date. Let's go back, all our variables and lined up. So let's save that and go back again. Let's keep an eye out here, refresh. There you go. That's our date, our title, content, and published status. So that's pretty much how we can use an object and get stuff out of this, right? So next, let's make this look pretty. Okay, we're back here. Now let's focus on this column right here. Once again, we don't need the print R, and make sure to get rid of this extra paren. Now here, we will call another variable called cat obj, basically, which is category object. Save that, and now let's bring this in from here and replace this cat obj and get rid of that. Save it. So just like this one, this getMyCats method is returning a category object array. With this method, we're gonna see it's an array of multiple category objects, right? So let's go back and refresh. There you go. So for each category, we're getting an object here, and they have all the information regarding each category. Cat 1, Cat 2, even uncategorized one. All right, so now that we can see them clearly, let's get the data out of this. But in order for us to do that, we're gonna put it through some sort of a loop, because this is an array of objects. For that, let's go create another static utility method. Okay, so we're back at the code, and let's write our new method right here. Okay, and now inside it, we're gonna let's bring in this guy again, so that we would have it started with nice little horizontal line. And in this case, let's change the color a little bit with another bootstrap class. All right, and now let's create the loop. And as you can see, we're getting an argument here, which is $ARR. Basically, that means an array. We're going to be sending an array through it, an array of object, so that we can loop through it. So let's write for each. Okay, so now let's analyze what we just wrote. Pretty much this is now getting this array here and looping through that array, and each item or each object inside that array represents a category, $cat, and once we are down to one object, then we can easily call all the attributes of the current category, like cat name, term ID, taxonomy, right out of that object. Just to be sure, let's go back, and if we look through here, we can see each object has these attributes: the term ID, which is the ID of the category, the name, slug, the term taxonomy is category. If it was a custom taxonomy, it would have that name in here. So that's exactly what we're doing, putting this array through a loop and collecting the data from each individual object. So let's go back. Hopefully by now this loop is making some sense, so let's use it. We know this line represents the visualization of the object, so what we do, we copy it. And in here, we already have the category object going in, and we're just going to change the name, show loop. Save it. Let's go back and keep an eye out here. Let's refresh, and there you go. We're seeing all these objects much clearly now by getting all the data out of them individually through a loop, and this loop comes from a static method in our utility class. And that ends this video right here. A lot more to come. Please stay tuned. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, and please do not forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please smash the like button and the subscribe button. This will help me bring more free contents like this to you every week. Thanks again.